Trial of persons released on bail in the federal system prior to 1963 had been 3%. 97% showed up. After we had substantially increased releases, 9,000 persons, we found that 3% dropped to about 2.5% that failed to appear for trial. Can you really ensure the public's safety by keeping persons that we presume innocent in jail pending their trial? Let's look at the whole picture. But first let me say that the notion that all we mean when we say in America the individual is presumed innocent until proven guilty is that we have here some procedural rule of evidence is contrary to my basic understanding of our purpose as a people. I think we mean the individual is important in America. We believe in him and we trust him. And in his relationship to the state, until he is proven guilty, he is good and worthy. Now, what is the real area in which we're concerned? Those who may flee must be detained. The system cannot function any other way. It cannot deal with the problems with which it must deal. It can't have integrity. If persons charged with crime cannot be brought to trial. So those persons can be detained. I agree with General Wilson that there's been much hypocrisy in our detention here, that we've set money bail high to detain people, not because we were afraid they would flee, but because there was a crime wave, or because people were frightened, or because the judiciary feared criticism, or because a judge feared this individual might commit another crime. And he would make the judgment that he would keep him in jail if he could by high money bail, and that's intolerable. Second, to those who may flee are those who are on parole or probation, but more essentially parole. This is the essence of the problem as I see it. It is crime repetition that we're really talking about. Heaven knows if we're frightened that this individual in the comparatively short period of time from arrest to trial may commit further crimes, that the risk of him committing further crimes in his life is much, much greater, or of his having committed crimes before is greater. Those who are on parole in an effective correctional system should have had, as practically none have, because the word parole is virtually meaningless. The federal probation system doesn't have enough manpower to fulfill 5% of the true community correction role of the parole service. But those who are on parole should have had a program that would have indicated at that time a violation of their parole. And while this doesn't eliminate all your problems, that man is entitled to due process. It comes to grips at the critical level, crime repetition. But to give that sentence is to inhibit corrections for years, as the correctional profession recognizes so vitally. Indeterminate sentences will bring within the scope of the period within which persons who have gone through the criminal justice process and are on release, the area between crimes committed within any reasonable period of time after their initial release and their subsequent trial, if any subsequent trial is really indicated, control through the indeterminate sentence, or something like that. We've seen a lot of that in this country. The second area, so critically important, is speedy trial, inseparable from the problem of pretrial conduct, but infinitely more important. If the criminal justice process in its entirety really has any deterrent effect other than during correctional activities, it's because of the nexus in the mind of the person convicted between what he did, his arrest, and his conviction. At liberty pending trial, that they're less likely to push for a trial and that there's more likely to be delays in trial. My judgment overall is that preventive detention would take the pressure off speedy trials. And the reason is the pressure doesn't come from the lonely defendant, the powerless individual. It comes from society and the system itself. And who's worried? Who's concerned? Where's the need? How embarrassed can I be there in jail? We better work toward speedy trial. The Constitution may have intended only to grant a right or focus primarily on a right granted the individual. It's essential for society today that trials be speedy. Finally, there's jail reform itself. Have you been in a jail lately? Do you think we manufacture criminals there? Of all the persons that go in who have the personal capability to commit crime, do more come out with that capability? Do you think homosexual rape occurs frequently? Do you think the subcultures in some of those are so brutal that they finally smash the last spark of compassion in some people, drive some to suicide? Do you think society has an obligation here? Do you think society is really protecting itself with its jails? Is this related to preventive detention, to people we say we presume innocent? Over 1/4 of all the juveniles who are incarcerated in the United States today, and this is pre as well as post-conviction detention, are incarcerated with whoever is in that day. A man who has spent 30 of his 40 years in one penitentiary or another. Addicts who secure their fix there. Murderers, rapists, and 14-year-old kids. These are the real reforms, and those who tell you there is a cheap, easy way will lead us down the road to self-destruction. We better stand up to our principles or change them. This, to me, is the lesson youth is trying to teach America now. Hypocrisy won't wash. These kids are too bright, too well-educated, too tough-minded. They'll see our inconsistencies. We should either presume the individual innocent until proven guilty or change our principle. To me, the greatest tragedy is our failure to face up. And to me, individuality itself is at peril today. Urbanization and mass population and technology. We need to establish traditions now that make the individual mean something in society, that bring respect to him, that give him as an individual the opportunity for fulfillment. I can really see, and I can see it in youth particularly, and this is the most distressing place, because it is so foreign to anything that I could ever understand. The time when people would tend to subordinate the individual as insignificant. After all, we'll have 1 billion more in the next decade, to mass interests. But where do you find fulfillment except in the individual? What other unit is there really? I say the need is not to talk tough, because it won't work, but to recognize as a